G'day and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to show you how to do the banded ankle stretch. Now this exercise, in my opinion, is one of, if not the best ankle mobility exercises that you can ever do. It's fast acting, it's very simple, and it has such an impact on a lot of dysfunction that we see. We know that ankle stiffness, ankle joint stiffness, not muscular tightness, but ankle joint stiffness can be one of the hidden underlying factors associated with so much foot and ankle pain in terms of Achilles issues, arch dysfunction, sort of shin splints, calf tears. A lot of knee dysfunction is based on a lot of ankle joint stiffness, and even hip and low back issues as well. So one of the things that's really beneficial about this exercise is it gets to the root cause of a lot of other dysfunction, and it can help make you a better athlete. So before we get to the stretch itself, one of the reasons that makes this exercise so effective is that we're taking a power band or a monster band or a jump stretch band, whatever you want to call it. I'll leave a link in the description down below. But the reason why this is so beneficial is that it attacks and addresses the underlying joint capsulous stiffness and restriction. And that's something that I think gets missed a lot in the industry, where we tend to live in a world where most restriction is based on muscular tightness, when in actual fact below that muscular tightness are the joints that have become a little bit rusty. Those joint capsules, which should have enough space there to allow the joint to move, based on a lot of modern footwear and heeled shoes and flip-flops or thongs, it tends to rob us of a lot of our basic ankle joint mobility, and that capsule becomes stiff around that joint. And by using a band, we can specifically target the deeper joint stiffness that often gets missed to see some fantastic results. Now, again, before we get to the exercise, we always want to make sure that you have something to compare it to afterwards, so that you can see how beneficial this actually is. And for me, one of the best exercises to do is just a deep squat, as deep as you feel comfortable. And what I want you to take note of is, with your feet straight, just drop down as far as you feel you can before you feel you have to compensate, whether that's lifting your heels up, whether that's bending your back, whether that's turning your feet out or caving your knees in. As soon as you lose that good foot straight position, stop at that point. Because when we do this exercise and then retest it again, you'll see a really strong change in how that feels. Now, the thing that I think is important about this exercise is I like to have the band above the ankle bone, and this is a little bit different to the majority of people who do this stretch. So in terms of joint kinematics or joint mechanics, theoretically the best position for this is actually underneath the ankle. When you have your foot up on something and essentially get into that bent foot position, it really hooks into the talus, that ankle bone, and really respects the kinematics that happen when you bend your ankle into dorsiflexion. And what we tend to see is on a fixed foot, that talus obviously stays still, then your tib and fib tend to translate over the top of that when your knee comes forwards. And by hooking the band underneath that, it really encourages that motion. But interestingly for me, and for all the years I've been doing this, I actually find I get better results when it's above the ankle bone itself. And for me, the reasoning behind this is when we get you into an ankle dorsiflex position, we're actually now biasing the stiffness at the back of the joint in a position of restriction. And in some cases, it can sort of gently jam up the front of the ankle. So if you do get ankle impingement or you do have some pain at the front of the ankle, be respectful when you do this. It should still help you a lot, and it will help you get past that ankle impingement really quickly. But in the interim, just make sure that if it does jam you up the front, it could be where the band is placed. But for me, clinically, I find I get the best results when the band is above the ankle bone. It really helps bias the back of that capsule, which tends to be the area that tends to get stiff and restricted for most people. So again, getting into the exercise, how I like to get my patients to do this is having the band above the ankle bone. I want you to stretch out as far as you feel comfortable, plant that foot on the ground, step through with your opposite leg. Now, what a lot of people do with this exercise is they tend to turn it into a lunge, and they tend to tire through their quads and their leg muscles really quickly. But there's a way that you can do this where you can just spend a few minutes here and it doesn't really expend much energy at all. So what I like to get people to do is, when you're in this position, before you bend your ankle, take your hips past your foot a little bit. So it's encouraging a little bit of dorsiflexion already. Then when you bend your knee and ankle, you should find that you can really bias the base of that ankle and hang out here for a lot longer with a lot more ease. Now, this position alone isn't good enough. So what I need to make sure that you do when you do this exercise is that because we're trying to get through a stiff ankle, one of the reasons why this exercise is so important is because a lot of people, if they have a stiff ankle and try and express normal range to that ankle, they'll find their body will find a path around that. So it's really common with this exercise that when people get into this position, that their knee dumps inwards and their leg dumps inwards so that they can go around that stiffness. But we need to make sure that we're actually going through that stiffness to get the most effectiveness from this exercise. And how that looks essentially is when you're doing this, we want to make sure that that knee stays out. And we want to go through essentially the middle of your foot. Even if you don't go as far, that's completely fine. So again, how that looks from front on, if you can see this, is instead of allowing the knee to cave inwards or the foot to turn out and cave inwards, we'll make sure your foot is straight, knee goes out and then forwards till you find your best position. You want to hang it here for 60 seconds, a minute, as long as you feel comfortable. And then, as I promised before, what you should find is when you do that deep squat again, you should automatically feel like you've loosened up that ankle a little bit more. It's one of the reasons that makes this exercise such a great exercise to do, is that it works really, really quickly and in large capacities as well. The more you can smash this exercise, the faster those ankles, or at least that part of your ankle mobility, the faster that will get better. Now, again, if you spend a bunch of time doing this and you're really comfortable with how to do it, what you can also do is you can start to change the position that you're in relative to the band. So instead of going straight forwards all the time, which will address a lot of the posterior stiffness, you can turn your body in whatever 360-degree position that you want, just to see how that makes you feel. So if you're more sort of 90 degrees to this and it's pulling more sort of medially or more inwards, you will bias more of the inside of the joint. If you're a little bit further facing the other way, you'll find that you'll actually bias the outside of the joint a little bit more. And obviously if you're pulling away this way, you might find it may jam your ankle up a little bit more, but it may also help you free up some of the other dysfunction as well. So the important thing with this exercise is that you find the position that biases some of that restriction that you have, then do your test and retest before and afterwards so that you can see exactly what you've done. And that's, again, what makes it so effective. So if you went on to enjoy this video, please leave a like down below. Let me know down in the comments what your go-to ankle mobility exercises are. I'm always trying to expand the things that I do on this channel. I want to make sure that I have the best information to give to you guys. I'm always open-minded, so if you have anything extra you think I need to check out, please let me know. Obviously leave a like on the video, but please subscribe to the channel if you're new. All this sort of content's coming out regularly and I hope it's really helpful. It tends to be based on the feedback that I get. Hopefully